So good morning guys, and welcome to the channel. And I'm going to have a cup of coffee, and today we're going to do a rooftop ramblings. Now we probably should call it yada 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 in the yard, because we're not on the rooftop, we're in the internal yard. Flowers are coming out, so that's nice. But welcome. Today we're going to talk about auto ISO. Why I never use it, why for me shouldn't even be on the camera. And already half of you have turned off, and the other half of you are starting to pen hate mail and and nasty comments below. But there's a reason. Now, when we take pictures, there are occasions when the base ISO setting of the sensor is not enough, and we have to increase it. And I get that there are some people that say, well, I shoot birds, and I want my f-stop at so-and-so, and I want this at so-and-so, so I keep the auto ISO. Well guys, you don't need to do it, in my opinion. Basically what you need to do is you need to learn about your camera, and you need to know how ISO works. And excuse me, I need to just have a drink. So you have to learn about your sensor, and you have your dial. Now I have here my mighty Nikon D850. Why is it mighty? This thing is a beast. People call it a beast because of the megapixel settings. It is a very, very heavy camera, and I have a 24-70 VR2 lens, which is very heavy. But for me, it's not heavy enough. So I stick a battery pack on the bottom, and then I think, okay, we'll put an L bracket on as well. So on this mighty 47 megapixel sensor, we have adjustable ISO, and on this camera the ISO is, its minimum setting is 64, and we have a little button here which is ISO. We press that in and we turn the wheel, and we can increase the sensitivity of the sensor. Well guys, if you believe that, you need to go back and learn a little bit more, because that's absolute wrong, and you couldn't be further from the truth. The sensor will only gather so much noise, and it is set at a sensitivity. So you do not increase your sensor sensitivity. What you actually do is, between the sensor and your memory card, there are two things. There may be a noise reduction thing as well, which will make it through. But there is an amplifier, and there is an analog digital converter, an AND. Now, in the old days, we used to use film, and if we were shooting like I did weddings, we would go inside a church and we would use 400 ASA film. ASA and ISO, they're virtually the same thing, they're just standards. Outside, sunny day, 100 ISO film. Now, why did we use 100? Why not use 400 all the time? Well, the reason we don't use 400 all the time is because 400 was grainier. And this is the point, my friends. When you take your sensor and you press that ISO button and you increase the sensitivity, what you're doing is you're amplifying the image. You're not increasing the sensor sensitivity, you're amplifying the image. So it's taking an image and it's enhancing it. It's putting more electricity in to make it appear brighter than it would normally be. And herein is a further problem. Your 47, in this case, megapixels, your sensor, it has all these little pixels, and they take in an electric charge. When they're full, it's white. When they have no charge at all, it's black. And it varies between all the other colours as well, all the other shades, I should say, or tones in between, the luminance. So if it's half full, it's mid-grey, and that basically is how it works. Now, if you amplify the signal, then what happens is you increase the noise and you lose contrast. But there is another problem as well, which is part of the reason for image degradation, is that once the pixel is full, it has the ability to overlap or to discharge slightly into the pixel next to it, and this is down to the sensors and how they're built. So to go through all of that again, when you amplify the signal, you increase the noise. Now on my camera, on this D850 at 64, which is its base ISO, it is phenomenal. The dynamic range is unbelievable, the detail is unbelievable. Now every increase of ISO reduces both of those things. So, is it acceptable? Well, for me, no. But if you say, well, I shoot flying birds, you know, I want to have auto ISO so I can have my settings and the exposure will be perfect. Well, I'm sorry guys, the exposure isn't perfect. Well, not at sensor level. At sensor level, the exposure will be what it is, and you're amplifying the signal if you increase your ISO. So, in the old days, and I recommend everybody watching this, if you grew up in the digital age, go back and buy these 3 books. Ansel Adams. This one, The Print. I'm showing you them in reverse order. This one, The Negative, and this one, The Camera. Now, with the negative, and what we used to do in old days, I never did it again, but in old days what we'd do is we'd buy 10 boxes of 100 ISO film, and then we'd want to shoot at night, so we would underexpose the film and overdevelop it. So we would basically compensate it, and that is what you're doing when you amplify your sensor. You are adjusting the exposure so it's wrong, and then you're increasing the processing, the amplifier, to make this correct. Well, it's not correct. The way that cameras work the best, whether they be film cameras or whether they be digital cameras, is to get the exposure within tolerances exactly right, and you will have a lovely sharp image if you focus properly, and lovely contrast depending on the film or the sensor, and everything will be tickety-boo perfect, and that is the goal. As soon as you alter that sensor ISO, you're degrading it, you're reducing the ability, and you're making it worse. So, auto ISO. And I have heard so many people, I only shoot manual, I like to be in control. Well, that's great, that's fabulous, and if that's your bag, guys, fine, no problem. I'll do another video on camera settings and why you should use different settings. Do I use manual? Yes, sometimes. Sometimes, note that. Do I use the others? Aperture priority, shutter priority, and program. Yes, I do. And I use program probably more than most of the others. But there's a reason. We'll go into that next time. Guys, we're talking about auto ISO. So, you only shoot manual because you want to be in control. And then the biggest and quickest way you can degrade your image, or you can have less resolution, etc., etc., is with the ISO. and you're passing that over to the camera and saying, look, I can't change everything, I can't do this, I can't, I can't be bothered with all these controls. I'm going to choose my f-stop. I want f16, lovely. I want the shutter speed. Okay, what shutter speed do I want? I want 500th of a second. It's a flying bird. I want 1/500th of a second. So you set it, and you find that in these conditions you can't have 1/500th of a second. So maybe you'll reduce your aperture a little bit, go to f8, and you get to 250th, and you say, okay, I'm going to up my ISO. And you up your ISO and you make it 1/500th of a second. So normal conditions, you're absolutely perfect. When you do auto ISO, it can choose whatever it likes. If you go through a bright patch, it will change the ISO. And as good as they are, they don't react fast enough. If I was shooting birds, me personally, in flight, I would pick the ISO for the conditions I was shooting in, and I would set the f-stop to what I wanted or needed, and I would see what shutter speed I got. If it wasn't fast enough, I would adjust the two. I would adjust the f-stop and I would adjust the ISO, but it's not auto ISO. I wouldn't let the camera just go up and down as fast as it likes. And guys, I know that you can set upper limits and all of these things, but it's defeating the object. If you're doing auto ISO, you're doing auto ISO. It's defeating the object. So, why do I never use it? I never use it, and I have never used it because I want the very, very, very best quality I can get out of my camera. And it means I've had to learn a little bit about settings and what I can handhold and what movement looks like, what blur looks like, and shutter speeds to stop blur and to stop various animals. So I set the camera and set it up for that shoot, but I may shoot in program. And program will change that f-stop, and it will change the shutter speed according to the brightness. But the point really is that if I shoot in program, not auto ISO, I'm not changing the ISO. So maybe I won't get the f-stop how I want it, and I can adjust it with one turn of the jog wheel. Or I can adjust the speed by again looking through the viewfinder and flipping the jog wheel. But I am not changing the ISO. So basically I've decided on what's the worst quality or the best quality I can get out of shooting this series of images, and I set the ISO accordingly so that my sensor doesn't have to be amplified. And this is the key, guys. If you're into electronics or music or stuff like that, the more you amplify, the more you get distortion, the more you get background noise, the more things go wrong. So I never use auto ISO. And you really, really need to look at what you're doing and question, is this the best way of doing what I shoot and how I shoot? Well, if it is for you and you use auto ISO, that's down to you. But know that you're passing over the largest control of the image quality to the camera, to the sensor, and it doesn't care. It doesn't care if there's a lot of grain or noise, or we used to call it grain in the old days, in the Ansel Adams days, guys. So the camera doesn't care about that. It says, look, I've got an image. But the problem is that with higher ISOs, and I think the D850 goes up, you see, I don't even know. I think it goes up to 12,800 ISO, and then it does super duper ones, high, which is all hidden. No, it's not 12,800, it's 25,000, 64,000. Listen, guys, I don't go that far. When I first had the camera, I shot a picture at every ISO, and I looked at it and I thought, I don't like that. Once it gets to there, I'm not interested. And I tried to keep it below. Is it worth having a noisy image, a digital grain on it rather than no image? Yes. Is it worth having a noisy image rather than a blurry image? Yes, without a doubt. But it's about juggling, it's about what you're doing. Now, I'm doing a lot of nighttime street shots, and I set my ISO at 64 ISO. And I put the camera on a tripod, I set everything up, and some of my exposures will be 20 or 30 seconds long. I don't go above that because the initial base picture I take, and then I light paint various aspects of the street. So I don't care if the rest of the image is black as long as the bit I've painted is well exposed. So guys, if it's your bag, that's fine, but understand how your sensor works. You don't change the sensitivity of the sensor. The sensor is made to perform at a level. What you're doing is you're changing the amplification of that signal, and as you increase the amplification on any signal, any digital signal, you increase distortion and noise, whether that be sound or whether it be digital imagery. So guys, you know, when people say about sensors, oh, they need to do more sensor technology, you know, it's the amplifier and the analog to digital converter they need to improve. The sensors are amazing, and yes, you can have a 100 megapixel sensor and so on and so forth, and all of those things work. But for me, I hate noise. I hate it. I hated it when I was a film photographer, and I hate it now. I want the cleanest, neatest picture I can get. If after I want to go arty and old-fashioned and introduce film noise or film grain, I can do it post. But I've got the cleanest image to work with to start with. And of course, if you have quite noisy images, and yeah, I know there's manufacturers out there that do noise reduction software, but it's not as good as getting an image clean to start with. They do noise reduction software, and some of it is very, very, very good. And some of the AI they're bringing out is amazing, and it gives you an impression. So, guys, if you feel you need to use auto ISO, do it. What I'm saying is it's not the best option, and you need to understand how sensors work, and you need to. It's good if you also understand how film used to work. And as I say, in the old days, and people that have developed film and push-processed a film are underexposed, overexposed, and underdeveloped or overdeveloped and underexposed, you know that you're affecting image quality, and it's the same with sensors. So auto ISO for me is a no-no, guys. You know, I'm not letting the camera choose. Now you say, well, Mike, no, you know, you're a hypocrite. This is just clickbait. No, it's not. Why is it? And you say, well, you use program. And the camera's choosing. And there's a little override button. There's a jog wheel. So when I'm looking through the camera viewfinder, and yeah, guys, I'm old-fashioned. I look through the viewfinder. When I look through the viewfinder, I can click one wheel, one way, left or right, and I can open or shut the aperture, and because the camera is doing program mode, it will adjust the speed accordingly. Or I can look at the speed and go one way or the other, and the camera will adjust the aperture. So I can control all of that from the viewfinder with one button. The camera's not controlling it. I've shot on program at 1/10 of a second f/16. I've also shot on program mode at 2,000th of a second at f/2.8, and you know, all of the combinations in between. Well, the camera doesn't choose that in program mode, not normally. It normally chooses a mid-range f-stop around 7.1 or f8, and adjust the light accordingly. So, guys, up to you. You want to use auto ISO, up to you. My preferred way of doing it, especially with moving things, is to say, right, I need a shutter speed of. I want a depth of field of. So let's say I want a relatively shallow depth of field, say f4, and I want a 500th of a second. And my camera says, no, if you want a 500th of a second, you need f2.8. So I say, okay, I'm going to up the ISO, but I do it, and that's set. And at the end of it, I can shoot in program mode, and it will adjust the f-stop and the shutter speed. Or I can, if the shutter speed is important for my movement and my panning and techniques there, I can set to shutter priority, 500th of a second, and let the camera choose the f-stop, and I can see what it's doing in the viewfinder, and I can set my ISO as an ISO to give me those conditions. Now you can go back to me and say, but I can set f4 and 500th of a second and the ISO will look after it. Yeah, it will. Guys, it can do it. You know, I'm not arguing with you. It will do it, but you're giving away quality. If it pushes the ISO higher and higher, you're giving away quality. So what I'm saying is, for me, I set the ISO to the best quality I can use for that image, and I do it in other ways. Now for me, on this magnificent creature, and listen guys, if you've got a Canon, don't moan at me. I think some of them are magnificent as well. But for me, on this magnificent creature, I want the best quality I can get. And for me, auto ISO on this, there should be a menu, not about, there's enough menus on the Nikon, but not about shooting settings, ISO settings, etc, etc, etc. There should be a little menu which is, I can't be bothered to learn how to use it properly setting. Put auto ISO in there. I don't want to take it away. Guys, if you want it, have it. Put it in a little menu entitled, I can't be bothered to learn how to do it properly. So, guys, listen, if you want to send me hate mail, do it. But, you know, I'm having a joke at your expense. I'm having a joke at my expense, but I seriously believe it. Learn how to use your camera, guys. I'll tell you what, the next Rooftop Ramblings we do will be about camera settings and what I use and why I use them. And maybe you'll understand a little bit more, guys, but you know, listen, I've blathered on and blathered on. If you disagree with me, put a comment below and I'll reply to you, no problem. Come on my Facebook if you want, friend me and then send me a private message and I'll tell you. But understand, guys, the sensor in this camera, which I believe was made by Sony, it's a good sensor, but the sensor in this camera does not alter when you change the ISO. So remember that whatever you do, you're interfering with the quality. This sensor works at 64 ISO. Anything else, we're reducing the quality. Now, it may be acceptable quality for you guys, it may be acceptable for me, it may be necessary, but I choose that. I don't let the camera choose it. I don't let the camera say, no, do it this way, we'll have this ISO. Why are you having this ISO? Well, because it's easier for me. So guys, auto ISO, don't use it. Well, if you want to, it's up to you, but I never will, and I never have. The only auto ISO I used is when I used to shoot weddings and I changed the back film. I used to shoot on a Mamiya. I changed the film back from 100 ISO to a 400 ISO when I went into the church, and when I came out of the church I took it off and went back to 100 ISO. Why did I do it? Because I wanted the best quality image all the time. And 400 ISO film was more grainy than 100, and so on and so forth. So guys, understand how your sensor works, but more importantly, understand how your camera works. Now, photography for me, you can talk about art, yeah, I love it. You can talk about image processing, yeah, I love it. You can talk about Photoshop or no Photoshop, but photography for me is about learning, getting it right, and understanding how this thing works. I know the shortcomings of this sensor and the shortcomings of this camera. I know when I need to push it a little bit. I know when I need to pull it a little bit, and I know when to say, hey, it's good enough, you can manage this, get on with it. Auto ISO, it's not one of those things, trust me guys. So listen, if you disagree with me, no problem guys, I don't mind if you disagree with me. If you want to argue with me about it, fine, let's have a nice discussion. Give me warning so I can get a glass of wine. It always makes me kinder when I'm drinking wine. But interact, you know, if you disagree, do it. Guys, I'm going to do the one about using different camera modes. I hope you find it useful, but I hope you understand more. I suggest, and I'm not on Amazon affiliate and all that sort of stuff, read about the negative, read about how to get the best negative, the camera and the print, and you'll understand a little more about how these things work, because modern day sensors are really like film. You know, you have a set film and it's in your camera. You can't change it like you can change films. So what you have to do is you have to underexpose and push the processing, increase the amplification, and that's what you're doing. And if you speak to any film shooter of years gone by, it will tell you there is always a trade-off in quality, and so it is with the sensor. So guys, hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you find it useful. My little rants, or my little, not rants, you know, people sometimes have a lesser understanding and they argue about things that they don't really understand. Once they understand, there's no point, they understand it, so it's fine. So I hope you find it useful. Until the next time, and I'm going to try and push a YouTube channel a little bit more because I don't get as many subscribers as I would like, and I have a lot to tell. So have a great time, enjoy your shooting, and if you're using auto ISO, just enjoy the thrill of your photography. For me, no, it's not ever going to happen. So convince me guys. Take care, and until the next time, have a great photography life. So guys, bye until next time.